Okay, so under the hood, this is the engine start battery. You'll see on the terminal there's a manual shutoff switch. And this is for storage. If you're going to store this RV for more than 2 weeks and you're not going to start the engine, I recommend you disconnect the battery just so it doesn't go dead while it's sitting. This is your washer fluid cap. This is your engine oil, the 5W20 designation. We use synthetic oil in these. This is where your air filter is located in this housing. By the way, I put a new air filter and we did an oil change too. Down here you'll see a yellow dipstick. That is your engine oil dipstick to check the oil. And over here you've got power steering fluid, brake fluid, coolant. This is the fuse box for the engine. In other words, like headlights, turn signals, things like that are fused in that location. On these units, if you have to change a headlight bulb, you'll see a metal tab. If you grab these and pull straight up, the headlight will pop out, and then you can change any of the bulbs if you have to. Very simple, really cool the way they did that. So I have the slide outs out right now, and you'll see there's 2 compartments. This is for the house generator and the house battery. And if you look under, you'll be able to see them exposed. That's your generator. There's a little rack for the battery behind it. Now the generator, you start and stop this from the inside, but I want to show you the cover. You'll see there's 2 locks, one on the left, one on the right of your screen, and that will remove the front cover off the generator. And in there you'll see there's a dipstick for oil, and to do other maintenance on it. Typically you don't have to mess with that, but I want to show you where it's located, how to get in there if you ever have to check any of that stuff. There is also an on-off switch on that to turn the generator on and off. So if you're out here, you'll be able to start and stop it without having to run back inside. But normally, you start and stop that using the inside switch, which I will show you when we get inside. And from this angle, you might be able to see the battery slides out of that rack. So a couple things over here. You're gonna see 2 ports here. One says city water and one says sewer tank flusher. So city water is what you use to connect fresh water to supply to the camper. So that's the one, when you go to a campsite, you're gonna hook your hose up over there. The sewer tank flusher is used to rinse out your black water holding tank. And if you look down here, you'll see a waste port. So this is where your wastewater discharges from. Okay. And you'll see a handle over here. And this is to discharge your gray water. So both black and gray water leave from this port. But what you have is actually 2 separate valves, because they're 2 separate tanks. Even though it's 1 port, there's 2 valves. So your black valve, you'll see, is right there, and it's larger. That's a 3-inch. And your gray water is right here. And this is kind of goes in on a rod, you'll see it. But to drain these tanks, you just grab this handle and you just pull this in and out. So when you pull this handle, that drains off your gray water. That's your sink and shower waste. And if you pull that handle, that drains off your black water. That's your toilet waste. Now, whenever you do the black water drain, that's when you can optionally connect in over here with the hose connection, and this will rinse your black water tank. And you let that run for a minute or two. That'll make sure your tank is nice and clean. So you only use this when you're done camping, when you're emptying your holding tanks. Okay, in this panel I want to show you there are some valves. And you'll want to refer to the diagram here and position these valves. And this configures your water system to how you're going to be using the camper. You'll see there's a section here for sanitizing and winterizing. And you know, at the end of the season, before it freezes, when you winterize this, you're going to position these valves in this manner, and that puts the system in winterization mode. Sanitizing is what you do in the spring when you go to flush it out. So these are spring and fall. These three modes here are what you use when you're out camping. So city tank fill mode, I want to explain what this does. In city tank fill, that means you connect a hose down here and it will fill your onboard freshwater tank. So you do that if you're going to go traveling or boondocking and you're not going to have a hose at your destination. This city tank fill allows you to fill the fresh tank via your city water, and once the tank is full, now you have water you transport with you. Now when you're through camping, you'll see a drain right here, and this is to drain off any unused water in that tank. I wouldn't recommend you leave water in there for long term. When you're not using the RV, you should be draining all water. Even fresh water, you're going to want to drain that. And that's what that little valve is for down there. So again, so city tank fill, that allows you to fill your tank. Now once the tank is full, in other words, you know, so you've connected here, you filled your freshwater tank, and there's a gauge inside, by the way, so you'll know when it's full. Once it's full, you have to return these valves to the normal position. And in the normal position, that configures your water system to use water from your freshwater tank. So then you can travel on the road, you'll be able to use, you know, sink, shower, toilet, etc. So that's what the normal mode is for. That's when you're traveling, you know, when you're camping someplace, you're going to leave it in the normal mode. City water mode. This mode is specifically meant to be used when you're at a campsite. So in other words, now you've got your RV parked and you have a hose that you can connect to. So say you go to a campground or someone's house, they have a hose they give you, so you're going to connect it here, and you can leave that hose on, and you can go to city water configuration. And in city water configuration, that means anytime you use water inside the unit, it's going to be coming directly from your city water supply and not coming from your tank. So that way you're not going to use any water in your tank. If you go to a campground, you're always using city water. You're not going to use tank water. So city water is when you're in a campground. Normal would be when you want tank water or when you're traveling. And city water fill, that's what you use to fill your freshwater tank. So that actively fills the tank, and once it's full, you don't want to leave the valves in that position. As soon as it's full, you transition to normal mode. The other two settings here you'll see, I mentioned these previously. This is used to sanitize and winterize You don't really mess with those until it's fall. That's another process. I'm not gonna go over that at this time. I can go over that with you in the future if you'd like. So that's what's in there. This is the outside shower box here, which okay, so you got hot and cold out here. In here, by the way, this is the sewer hose storage. So if you open this, you'll see a tube, and that is just a place you can store your waste hose that you use to drain the wastewater. That's when you're through camping. In here, this is the electrical cord hatch. So in here, you'll find the power cord for the RV. And you can see here, I have an adapter. I only have one hand right now working, so let me see if I can, I don't know if I can pop this off or not, but okay, so that's the 30 amp plug that you're gonna use. That's what, and you use that in a campsite, in a campground, but you can also pop this adapter on, and this converts it to a standard plug. Now, one thing to keep in mind, even though this looks like a dryer plug, this is 110 only, so you never plug this into a dryer plug. That's 240, and you will damage things in the RV, so just be careful with that. There is a hatch. You'll see this little hatch right here, and that just comes out through the bottom. That's so if you're camped out at a campground, you can run the wire through to the ground and you'll be able to lock the door up. There's also telephone and cable inlets over here. I think there's a cable wire left in here and some other doodads from previous. This looks like it might be like a water takeoff you could use. So you have an extra spigot out here. So anyways, that's what's in there. And this just gets you into your rear storage. Fuel caps back here. This is the rear storage. Go straight through. There is a light in here too. So remember to shut those off so you don't have a dead battery, right? All right, a couple things over here. This is the vent for your fridge. This is removable for service. This is the vent for your furnace. Same story. That's the vent for your water heater. All these things are controlled from the inside. The water heater, I'll show you one thing. There's a drain plug right here. It's a plastic plug. And during winterization, this needs to get drained. That's part of that process. But other than that, you really don't have to mess with those. Clean them out once a year. Up here, that's the vent for the stove, if you're gonna cook inside. This is the propane tank, and you'll see there's a gauge here. There's also a main valve that you can turn the gas on and off. Long-term storage, recommended to probably shut this down. All right, walking inside, first thing I want to show you is this switch here. This is a master battery disconnect switch for the house battery. This will turn off the house batteries, and that's for storage. Again, when you're not using the RV, you want to shut that switch, and that will make sure the batteries don't go dead while it sits. Very important to utilize those switches in an RV. These are some light switches here, you'll see. Interior light, so that turns on some of the ceiling lights. These lights have switches on them too, so you can turn the light on and off with the switch. Exterior light, that's a light that's on the outside up here, you'll see. Okay, and then there's one here that says electric steps on and off. And what that is, that's actually the lockout. So normally when you open the door, the steps come out, close the door, the steps go in. Once you have the unit parked, you may want to activate the lockout so that the steps stay in one position. This way, you don't run the motor, 10 times a day when you're going in and out. You can just leave them in the out position. The nice thing here, even if you forget that they're locked out, when you start the engine, the steps will automatically come back in. That's kind of a safety feature they added to this, so it's a nice thing to have. There's also a ground fault outlet here, of course, because we have a sink. And in an RV, they wire everything into this. So if one of the plugs doesn't work somewhere, you may have to reset this outlet. This is the first outlet in the chain. Okay, so in this panel, a couple things we're gonna go over. This is your monitor panel. This shows you approximately how much water you have in each of your tanks. Like fresh water, for example, if I push fresh, see it says empty. Okay, and black is toilet, gray is sink and shower. So you basically look for the lights to come on. If I hit bat, that tells me battery about 50% right now. Fresh water, black water, gray water. So that's how you check how much liquid is in your holding tanks. You'll also see a switch for the pump here. And that's your water pressure pump. That's used when you're boondocking and when you're traveling. This creates water pressure using your onboard water supply. So when you're camping, at someone's house or, in a rest area, you'll have to turn that pump on in order to use your fresh water supply. Anytime you connect to a hose, if you ever connect into city water, then you don't use the pump. You only use the pump if you're standalone without access to a hose, and that'll create water pressure in the system. These two switches here run your water heater on LP gas or electric mode. There's two switches. LP gas can be used anywhere. Electric, of course, you have to be plugged in if you'd like to use electric to make hot water, but that'll save you propane. So you got two ways to make hot water. It's important, make sure you do not turn on these switches with a dry system. Make sure you always have water flowing. Go to the sink, turn on the hot water, make sure you have water coming out, and verify that your water system's operational, because you don't want to turn those on dry because you can damage the unit. The switch for the generator, to start your generator, you hold it to stop for 10 seconds. You'll see the light come on, and this will prime the fuel pump so the generator starts quicker. Then hit start. And the red light should stay on. So now your generator is up and running. Within a short time, you should see like the clock come on your microwave. That's telling you it's producing. Now we know we have power in the unit once you see the clock come on. There's also an hour meter here on the generator. So the generator does a couple things. It makes 110, so all your outlets come on, obviously. It also charges the battery in the house here in the back. So if your battery gets low, you can start your generator, and you can see now batteries being charged. It's going right up to full. Also, anytime your engine's running up front, it's charging your battery too. I want you to keep that in mind. So there's 2 ways to charge your battery. 3 ways actually. Also, anytime your RV is plugged in, it's going to charge the battery too. So there's a couple different ways you can charge the battery. This switch here is to run. Here, let me shut this off. This switch here is to run your slide out room. So this will open and close the slide. The slide works best if you either have the generator running or the engine running, and that just gives it the most voltage so that the motor has plenty of power to open and close the slide. So when you're going to run the slide, if you can start the motor first or start the generator first or be plugged in, that would be the best way to do that. There is a switch here also for an inverter. This unit's was pre-wired for an inverter. It is not installed in this model. You have a generator here to make 110, so there'd really be no use for an inverter, honestly. But it is pre-wired if you ever wanted to add in an inverter. So that switch is kind of up there. Whenever you need 110, you're going to be starting your generator, and that'll produce 110 volts for everything inside the unit. Okay, on the stove, anytime you use this, remember you're going to want to, you lift this, you fold it back like that. You turn this to light. I'm just going to light all 3. And this is your sparker. You'll see there's an arrow. This knob you only turn clockwise, and that lights your top burners. To use the oven, there's an extra step. So you're going to turn this to where it says pilot. It also says push and hold. And you will have to hold this in with your thumb and light the pilot, which is, it's right back there. I don't know if I can get it in focus or not. But anyways, you're gonna basically hold this in, and then you put a flame back there. That will light the pilot. Once it's lit, you continue to hold this for around 20 seconds, and then you can set your temperature. When you're through with the oven, you go all the way to off. These doors automatically lock. You'll see there's a little pull handle here to open and close these. To turn this on, you'll see on off. Just gonna hold that down. Light comes on. And right now you'll see this is indicating LP gas mode. So this fridge can run on LP gas or electric. Normally, you're going to want to leave this in auto. And as long as it says auto, it will always try electric first. And if it doesn't have electric, it will go to LP gas automatically. So in other words, if you have it in auto, this will always work. And that's the preferred mode. You can manually change it, you know, back to gas, whatnot. Auto is where you're going to want to leave this all the time. Temp set, this lets you change the temperature. 5 is mid-range. You can see this goes up to 9, which is the coldest, and back to 1. I'll leave that on 5. And just hold that down, that turns it off. This fridge, any of these RV fridges, these take about 4 hours to get cold, so make sure you turn this on ahead of time and you give it some time to warm up. Cool down, rather. Shower door. This is there's a little latch here. And when you're driving, make sure this thing is latched. and that'll hold these doors. Okay, there's outlets back here. There's some lights under here. These have little twist buttons on the top to turn them on and off. Up here, there's an exhaust fan. You can, you know, raise and lower this here. And this is your speed control. And this does, you can do intake or exhaust. There's a little switch there. It says in, out. So you can change this if you want it to bring air in or out, basically. So there's a light switch here. This is for ceiling light. This lifts up too. There is a little storage under here. And in here, there's a couple switches we'll go through. Some of these are labeled. There's a couple lights. Power vent. This is actually the exhaust fan. So this you'll have to leave, right now it's off. You have to leave this on if you want this switch to work. I'll leave that on for you so you can turn it off with this switch here. There's also a second switch here for the water pump. Now remember, your main panel in the front of the camper has a switch for the water pump, but say you get in here and you've forgotten to turn it on, this is just a backup switch you can use to turn the pump on. There's a switch here. It says tank heater. This is for cold weather climate. You turn that on and that will heat your tanks underneath the unit so that hopefully they do not freeze up on you. And that's basically, you know, to heat the tanks if it's going to go below freezing. The last switch is not labeled, but what this does is actually the shower light. So that turns on and off your shower light. This door too, when you open it, it will kind of lock into this position as well. I'm going to start your generator again for a moment. So this is the control for heating and air conditioning. So this you have to aim up here when you push the buttons, and it'll beep at you if it receives the signal. So right now, I'm gonna hit, if I hit on off, you'll see it's gone to cool, high, and it's set to 63. If you want to change the temperature, you know, you can raise and lower it here as you like, okay? There's also, you'll see fan speed, and you can put it on low fan speed or auto, and it will go between high and low on its own, basically. There's a filter here. I want to show you these because these you can remove. They just basically slide out if they get too dusty, and you can get them cleaned out and whatnot. So that's cool mode. If I hit mode over here, it'll go to dry mode, which runs it in dehumidifier mode. There's also a fan only mode where it just circulates air. And then the last is your furnace. and that's for heat. If you want to run your heat. Your heat's down here. That's the intake, and that's where some of the heat comes out. There's one there. There's another one in the kitchen area over there. There's another one that blows out directly into the bedroom. And again, you can set your temperature here. Just make sure when you push the buttons, you hear the beep. If you don't hear the beep, it doesn't get the signal. And then what it says here may not be correct. So always make sure it beeps when you're using the remote to set it. Turn it off. There are some basic directions here as well for the remote control. If the batteries are dead and you absolutely need to turn this on, there is a hard button on the unit. You'll see it says furnace emergency and cool emergency. So you can manually push these buttons to turn on the heat or air conditioner if needed. This TV, as you know, it's an older TV, but I do want to show you how to operate this. This has been updated with the digital tuner box, so it actually gets all the digital stations. If you look in here, you'll see a switch box, and you can see this green light. The green light is to turn on your antenna. This is your antenna, by the way. It's a roof mount antenna. This allows you to raise and lower the antenna. Honestly, you almost don't have to with the digital box, but that's where it's located. If you want to use the antenna, just make sure that that's switched on. If you want to use cable, then you have to make sure that's switched off. So I turned the TV on first, which is this remote here. That's the Toshiba. There's also this box, says Magnavox. This is the digital converter, and that's this remote here, Magnavox. And if you turn this on, it'll say scanning, and this will give you all your local stations now. Now, I did this in Southington, so I have our stations, but if you move to another town, I want to show you how to redo it. You're going to go into setup, and you're going to go this, where it says channel, and you're going to use these arrows, and you're going to go over to this auto scan where it says auto scan. Auto scan will find all your local stations and put them into the TV's memory. And once you do that, you can just toggle through, and you get all our great local programming. But it gets about 30 stations off the antenna and the converter box, so that's all working. To use that converter box, just make sure that this TV is set to channel 3. So make sure that's on 3. Then turn on the Magnavox converter, and you'll get your local stations. There's also a DVD player down here you can use for DVDs if you'd like. Okay, last we'll do a few items up here. First off, power seat, that adjusts your driver's seat. Underneath there's a few things. This is a brake controller for a trailer brake. So if you wanted to tow a small trailer, that runs the trailer brakes. Otherwise, you could just ignore that that's there. There's a button here that says aux start. This is used if your engine's dead and you need to jump. You can try to jump your engine using your house battery. So if your engine's dead, what you do, hold that in and turn the key. That'll give you a built-in jump start. These are your power mirror controls that adjust your left and right mirror. This on-off switch is for mirror heat. That turns on the heating element to heat the mirrors. And this is your backup camera. Now obviously anytime you go into reverse gear, the camera comes on and then it shuts off. You can turn this on all the time. There's a power button, and if you hit power, that'll run your backup camera the whole time you're driving. Okay. Couple last minute things here. Pretty self-explanatory, but to make this into a bed, you're gonna unlock and then you just slide this down. Pick your cushions up first because you know you need to put the cushions on top of the platform there to make that usable. And this is kind of like a futon. You basically pick this up in the center. Can't do it with the one hand, but if you just lift that in the center, it lays flat, just like a futon. This is a safety for the slide out. If you're going on a long trip, you can latch this. Just don't forget that it's latched. I'll close your slide and I'll try to show you where that goes. So if you look straight through here, you'll see a metal bracket protruding. And this, you can kind of hook through there. I guess that just goes like that. I would just leave it off. It seems like something that I would forget. Okay. If you have any questions or need help with anything, feel free to give us a call. You can also email or text. If we're closed, I can get the text on my phone and hopefully be able to help you out. So to open the awning, first you're going to unlock the safety here. So you're going to lift that. Also, make sure this knob is loose. Okay, next, using the circle end of the wand, push this lever up. Okay, so we push the lever up. Then using the wand, grab the strap here, and you're gonna pull this down. Once it's down, slide the arm all the way up and lock this into place. This will click into place. And this little tab will come through. So you do this to release it. And that's to install, that's to lock it in. This arm is to tension the canvas so it doesn't sag. So grab this and pull down a little bit, and you can see now the canvas is tight, and then you'll tighten the knob. And that's gonna hold the canvas so it's tight. Last is to set your height, and you're gonna raise this handle and push this up, and it should, that pin should pop right in, right there. I'm in the third hole here. And then you go to the other side, you do exactly the same thing. So slide this up, tension it, tighten the knob, and then use this to set the height. Now, if it's windy or rainy, you're probably gonna wanna close this. If it's a light rain, you can lower one side to make the water drain off a little easier, but if it's windy or stormy, you definitely wanna close it. So to close this down, you're just gonna pick up on the handle, and it comes down. Then you're gonna loosen the knob, get this release. Slide that back down. To make it roll up, gonna grab the strap. If you have a helper, you can have them flip the lever. But if you're doing it yourself, just bring the strap over. And you see this is still in the open position, so I need to flip this lever. Okay. And now this spring is going to wind this up for me. Once it's gone in, you're going to return these to the lock position, and also just snug the knob. Same thing down here. Snug the knob and return this to the lock. When you go to lock this, you're gonna have to squeeze these together. See that? So squeeze it together, and then that lock will go right in. Okay, in the bucket is your starter kit, and I'll go over some of the items in here with you. So this is a wash and wax. This is used on the exterior. This is a non-abrasive cleaner. It's something that's safe to use on the roof, the awning, your car. It's a nice soapy cleaner to use to keep it looking nice. There's also some RV marine toilet paper. Now this paper is special for RVs because when it sits in your holding tank, it will dissolve, and that's to prevent clogging and to prevent fouling the sensor that tells you how much water's in the tank. So make sure you use RV marine paper when you're out camping. There's also a 25-foot freshwater hose, and this is just like a garden hose, except this is drinking water safe. This is what you use to put water into your camper. And this is a waste hose, so this is what's used to empty the camper. On the other side, remember where you had the cap, where your black and gray valves are. You take the cap off, this screws on, the other end goes into the port in the ground. This is the electric adapter. This goes on the end of the cord, and this converts from a camper plug, which is a 30 amp, down to a 15 amp, so you can plug this in at home or with an extension cord if you need to. Inside this bag are 4 pouches or 3 pouches of the chemical for the toilet. And before you go camping, you take 1 pouch, you flush it down the toilet, and that stays in your holding tank while you're camping. The last item is the water pressure regulator. This screws on to the faucet at the campground before you connect your hose. And that's to limit the water pressure coming into your camper so that it doesn't damage anything inside the unit.